Thanks for the welcome. I have this new book out, and before I start rambling too much, I just want to explain the approach. I have been in academia for obviously the majority of my life, about say 20 years. I've only been out of academia for about a year and a half. I graduated in 2013. Now, I studied sociology at university. I wasn't prepared for how transformative an experience that would be. So I ventured out into the world of entertainment in order to share what I was learning, because I felt like this shouldn't be a conversation of a privileged few. This should be something that is incorporated into our day-to-day lives, our experiences, and our common sense. So my approach is to incorporate these messages in my chosen art form, spoken word, to make it more digestible with music, and then to give everyone as many access points as possible by diversifying my product, which is the part of the reason for this book, aside from the fact that I just love what I'm doing, and I would wish this for everyone. So the first poem that I'm going to share with you is in my new book, Search Party. It's called The Spectrum. I've never been so nervous to turn a page in my life. My perception of color can be altered by a simple adjustment to my eyes. That means navy blue could be baby blue. So why do we treat color the way we do? We don't know what an objective perception is because we can't overcome how subjective the spectrum is. Life is a collage of views you perceive, and that preconditions what you choose to believe. So if navy blue could be baby blue, the problem or the solution may be you. All we really have is the perceptible, the tangible, and of course the ability to understand it all. So why do humans act so strange in a world full of facts when the facts don't change? You'd think we could at least agree on what's not fair and distinguish between validity and hot air. Because we believe in the ability of humankind to figure out anything given enough room and time. We believe in the natural order of things. There's no parallel universe or Lord of the Rings. There's only one predictable, logical existence, and any alternative claim warrants your resistance. But is that as far as the story goes? You feel like collectively we have enough intelligence to pursue what we want, and we want what's best. Therefore, a social democratic agenda constantly presents us with new prospects. So what's next? Do we sit around and wait for the change to come? Well, that might seem a little strange to some because according to the facts, the change is overdue. It's just something that many of us don't pursue. But the inconvenient truth is that reality is arbitrary. We share the gift of life, the gift of boys, the gift of girls. We share the same planet, but we live in different worlds. Numbers don't lie. They show great precision, but at the end of the day, they don't make decisions. People call shots. Or not. We spend so much time discerning the fine line between picking our battles and turning a blind eye that we forget we're in this together. And if we win this war, we win this forever. So I'd love to paint a rainbow of cordiality, but I might have to interrupt your reality. It's hard to pursue the secrets of truth and enjoyment when you're facing record numbers of youth unemployment. In a world where unemployed equates to null and void, jobs require competence, and this doesn't inspire confidence. 1 in 4 kids is BME, black minority ethnic, in primary school. And that's when life's about PS3 and trying to be cool. That figure slips to 1 in 5 in secondary school. If we assume meritocracy, that's a necessary fall. But 1/8 of the workplace is from a minority ethnic background. and they're represented by 1/16 of the boardroom. So what do we make of the facts now? Different people have different skill sets. If society doesn't value what they can trade, the implication is they just do not make the grade. But it's not like the talent and the spirit isn't there, so we need to actively make this pyramid a square. In the last 3 years alone, the rate of unemployment among young black males has more than doubled. It's easy to look at a group and call them troubled, but nothing is isolated. We're all in trouble. A more representative workforce brings better understanding and hence customer satisfaction. So let's strategize and adjust to the plan of action. With the right managers, the game could become equal. So let's give the platform to capable young people. How long this will take is hard to say, but everybody's got a part to play. All I ask is you allow yourself to be bothered every morning when you start the day. Your approach to recruitment, your involvement of students, challenge your thought process to support progress. In 2012, we turned for the games for proper unity, but let's go for gold in the race for opportunity. Because after the ceremonies, the fire and celebration, we still need to inspire a generation. Thank you. Bear with me, I'm very nervous. I don't know why I usually get nervous, but I do know why I'm nervous, because nothing matters more to me than this. I have to stand up on a lot of stages and entertain, and there's nothing wrong with entertaining. When I was young, I thought that's all I wanted to do. But as my awareness broadened, I realized that that doesn't have to happen separate from the sharing of information, the discussion of information. I don't mean to come across preachy or prescriptive, but to be honest, I don't really care how I come across. I'm just keen to have progressive discussions. So with that in mind, I want to share with you this next poem. It's called The Power of Collaboration. Humankind has made so much progress. And since I want to take part in the glory, it occurs to me that it's a linear process, and I'm part of a story that started before me. History is the record of decisions we enacted, and that contains knowledge that can't be abstracted. The excitement of discovery is hard to fathom because there are some feelings you can't imagine, like facing a situation as serious as crisis, and that's why experience is priceless. Collectively, we challenge these forces. We pool our knowledge and we manage resources. So I can't pretend to feel no form of unity with everyone else in this global community. We're internationally connected, and that supports friendship, as can be expected. That's why I'm still in touch with my old school teachers. See, humans are essentially social creatures. We have debates, exacerbate, exaggerate, and aggravate, but make no mistake, we're best when we collaborate. We'll last longer, no less forever, if we use this life to progress together. Collaboration has both crowned and killed kings. It's a way of maximizing skill, and skill brings to life our raw desire to build things, for innovation and growth, for the stimulation of both. In this climate of global shifts and price inflation, good ideas don't exist in isolation, and that's usually apparent in hotspots for growth, opportunity, and talent. But the point is this: the world is expanding, and even if we gravitate to home, there's more to explore, but we can't navigate alone. See, the future holds unexposed dangers, but no stress. Human beings are no stranger to progress. Finance, construction, technology, and media. Trustworthy friends make the journey much easier. And trust is essential to partnership, because dialogue is often the hardest script to stick to without too much deviation. So good friends are due appreciation. Bear witness and see the intricacy of how mutually beneficial good business can be. Friends save you time and money. It's an added bonus if you find them funny. Provided you intend to go the distance, a good partnership makes loads of difference. See, history is a lot like friendship. It tends to teach us more about ourselves and helps us lead the march of progress in which we can't afford to doubt ourselves. As we've proven, where collaboration occurs, progress follows fast. We dictate what the future holds because today's present is tomorrow's past. Thank you. So just to close this performance segment of my time here, I would like to implore you, whatever you hear from me, whatever you see moving forward, please don't be scared at any point. Where I'm from, there is a lot of pain and anger stored up, and that pain and anger, it informs a lot of what I do. But I don't want that to alienate anyone. I don't want to have to hide that fact, and I don't want to have to apologize for it. I am genuinely interested in progress. So let's have a constructive discussion. Thank you.
So, George, that was fantastic, as always. I won't be the neutral interviewer because, as I said earlier, I'm a bit of a fan, despite being an ex-schools minister and a member of the House of Lords. I'm still allowed to like this kind of thing. Let me start with the work, really. Listening to the EP, Chicken and Egg, that's it feels like an extended story. Mm-hmm. It also feels like it's something that could form the basis of PSHE and sex and relationship education in our school curriculum. And then in the book, The Search Party, you have this range of very personal, very political. I suppose it's the obvious question to a writer, but what inspires you? Is it anger? Is it just what you're listening to on the radio? What is it?
Well, the reason the book is called Search Party is because it's informed by my search. I'm searching for, I started off searching for the person, the template that could guide me in a world in which my experience went largely overlooked. I couldn't find that person, and over time I realized that person was myself. When I made that revelation, I became more introspective, and the more I explored my ideas, my experiences, my flaws, I found navigation strategies and solutions. That is something that I want to offer to everyone. And because I want to offer that to everyone, I have to find a way of sharing it that makes sense all the time. And commodifying that message made sense to me. And then the rest, obviously the entertainment of it, I downplay that, but that's obviously a big part of it as well.
And does it start with you being a poet, a writer, and then secondary a performer? Or are you writing in order to have something to perform?
It starts with me having thoughts. See, what happened is I learned the form of poetry. I started rapping when I was 14, and that was a technical venture. I just wanted to know how to do it. I wanted to have fun. That became a habit. It's just like essay writing. I think in terms of how we would encourage to think in order to write a good essay, point, example, comment. That then whatever you, as it's a form of expression, your ideas just take that form. So as long as I have ideas, there will be poems.
Okay, cool. And that relationship with rap is interesting. In the introduction to the book, your publisher says you are the natural inheritor of Linton Kwesi Johnson, but then we see people like Kate Tempest now bridging that gap between rap and the music world and writing and poetry. Do you think that's something that's now a natural progression out of rap and that sort of street poetry that represents?
I think it was always there, but I think what is happening is that the conversation around rap is evolving, so people are understanding that it is clearly a force to be reckoned with, and it has played a big part in social transformation. And as a result of that, it's easier for me to come out and be known as a poet that pays homage to rap, that got his craft from rap. You will see that will be a more prominent feature of the next generation of artists.
And I was reading an interview you did about a year ago with a Cambridge-based publication, and that talked to you about theatre, and that maybe there was a possibility of you doing a bit more theatre, and that there's so much that you could trace all the way back to Shakespeare in some of the sorts of performance that you do. Mm-hmm. Is that something you might go into?
100%. It's something that I would love to be doing right now alongside everything else that I'm doing. That's why I've got the book and the EP out at the same time. But I just want to do things properly, so it takes time.
Well, I'd love to see that. My first career was in theatre, so okay. Yeah, that's where I'd also like to see you use your talents. Now, I was a politician full-time. I now dabble a bit as a legislator. I was interested to see, you've studied politics for 6 years. I think in your introduction to the book, you say, I studied politics for 6 years. I always felt alienated from it. Let me be clear, I wasn't uninterested, just alienated. Discussing politics always felt like critiquing a story that I actually wanted to co-write. Yep. So I read co-write, and that excites me. So, George for London Mayor?
Wherever my interest is in, obviously, sustainable development, community development. So wherever that makes the most sense, I welcome that. What made me weary of politics over time was the parliamentary structure, not specifically parliamentary, but partisan politics. Party politics started to look a lot like the music industry. It becomes a machine unto itself, and there are games that you have to play simply for the functioning of the machine, which is a well-known consequence of bureaucracy. But I just wanted to get my grounding ideologically first and be known as a trusted commentator before I started having to learn, like even in the music industry now, I'm having to learn new navigation strategies, which is good because, like I said in the poem, it's all about collaboration, and we want to ensure that we increase stakeholder value, so everyone who's involved in the process benefits and doesn't feel alienated or doesn't feel vilified. And I don't know if I could do that in politics just yet, because I'm still a bit pissed off about everything, but it will come.
And clearly your voice has an audience and has an impact, which many politicians would love. Is that something you want to use for a political outcome?
I want to use it for a social outcome. Yeah. So if that has political implications, I welcome that. I'm open to that conversation. I was actually speaking with the culture minister the other night. I'm keen to have to move forward with politicians. I just want it to be genuine.
Yeah. I'm sure you could teach politicians of all sides a little bit about authenticity and a real voice from real people. But I won't tempt myself to go down that road because that's probably too dangerous for me rather than you. We had the 3 of the political parties on the stage here an hour ago answering questions from the audience. What do you want them to do differently in schools?
Be more avant-garde about contextualizing the learning experience. We need to help these kids care about what they're learning. That it's not hard. Just open the conversation. And that then becomes an issue of representation, communication, engagement of different communities. It can happen, but I think oftentimes I see this in all walks of life. People are so scared of what they stand to lose, they lose sight of what they stand to gain. And that needs to stop.
Now, this is a good point as we segue into education for me to ask Heidi to come and join us. Heidi is one of the leading authorities on ethnicity, gender, and identity in education. She's
Great to meet you.
Please.
I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan. It's a mutual fan club.
Yeah, we can have a bit of a love-in. But so I'm then interested. At one level, weirdly, I went to a selective school. You went to a selective grammar school in North London. We both went to Cambridge. We both studied politics and sociology. We're just the same. I'm maybe twice as old. Just tell me what you think about that background, what it gave you and what you're critical of.
It gave me an awareness of what is the word? Not just ecosystem, but interdependence, how things relate to each other. Because I came from a community that is largely alienated from big conversations. It's funny, like I don't think I hear stuff on LBC that speaks. It says London's biggest conversation, right? I don't know how much it speaks to my experience specifically. However, going to a selective grammar school in the first instance was the biggest culture shock for me, because I realized, first of all, there is an upper middle class that has habits and networks, references, wherewithal that my community is largely outside of. And it's just about learning the language. That was a very painful process for me. My appearance was made, it was othered, was made to feel offensive. To this day, I'm self-conscious about wearing a hood. I wear hoods because hats, my neck gets cold a lot, so it protects the back of my neck. But something inside me feels like it's rude, it's improper to wear a hood. Something inside me feels like it's improper to speak how I speak, to get the haircuts that I get. And that's all from the training that I got at the school. But what the school was trying to do was teach me the mode, the code that the upper middle class are very well versed in, that is practiced in the home. And when I started studying sociology, I was able to put words to these things. And through Heidi's work as well, studying that kind of research helped me to articulate these feelings. And when I got to Cambridge, I was across the conversation. I had practiced the theory, but my school was, being middle class, the concept is that it's mobile, right? It's about upward mobility. So it was predominantly Indian. The Indian British community has been upwardly mobile since it's come here, largely speaking. So I was still in a situation, just like my community, in which the minority was the majority, just a different kind of minority. But in Cambridge, I got the big picture. I was like, okay.
It's full of people like me.
Yeah, and it was good for me to know that those people are not alien.
Yeah.
They're not immediately wrong or against me. It's just you have to actively fight for representation, because that is something that, like, if people such as yourself move into the places of influence and power, there are things that will occur to you as common sense that will just be oversight. For my life, have you ever noticed the color of a plaster?
Right.
Yeah.
I've not thought about that.
Yeah. It's not really made for my hue, or the fact Heidi would be able to tell you that a lot of women's cosmetics are described as nude. Nude for whom?
Okay. We want to get back into some of that, but Heidi, just tell us about your schooling and another successful person from a minority background. How does it work for you?
Oh, I don't know where to begin. Well, I came from Trinidad and to England in the 70s, and a bit like you, George, massive culture shock. I mean, coming, into a white world, a world where, they threw peanuts at me and thought that I cheated because I could do well at school, because in the 70s, we had ESN, the idea that, people from the Caribbean have less intelligence. It was inbuilt into the infrastructure of the system. And, to just be catapulted into that without any kind of cultural capital, ability to navigate and to disassociate and to protect yourself was a huge culture shock. And I think it has shaped everything that I've done since. And this is the question that I have. So we end up talking about inequality to white people. This is the job that we have, so we can progress, but only as long as we talk about these issues. So we get rewards. I always say pets win prizes. So we talk to white folk about being black, being othered, and they pat us on the heads, and we go, thank you, and we take whatever crumbs fall from the table. And, now I have a professorship, but what is it in? Race, faith, and culture. It is in inequalities. I'm emeritus professor here of inequalities. And I often ask myself, would I have got this opportunity if I wasn't talking about race and gender and the intersectionality of those things? These are the questions. We get crumbs from the table. So what are those crumbs? And this is what I wanted to ask you probably about, you talk about the hard stuff of life, the world you live in, and you bring it into places like this. Somebody was just asking me about having you in the House of Commons, speaking, can I put a word in for him? So we enter into the white world with our Band-Aids and our plasters. And, the question is, does it change? How do we change the monolithicness of whiteness? Because this is your quest. This is it's both your gift and your burden. And it's a big burden to bear. And there's been times when I've wanted to walk away. I mean, I seriously want to walk away. The only thing that keeps me going is the love of my students, people like you, the writing that can reach out. But, I don't know why we have to do these. Why do we need to do this? And why do you need to do it as a hip-hop artist? Not that I have a problem with hip-hop, and I love it, and I'm working with a lot of people doing hip-hop, but a black man has to speak in hip-hop to get recognition. Why?
George.
So
sorry.
on that point,
Mini lecture.
beautifully raised points, things that I grapple with every single day. It goes down to a philosophy that I've developed. It's called take the L. Now, take the L is I think it's an American sporting term, which is referring to a loss. Right? You can either get a W or an L from a game. Minorities or marginalized groups in general, sometimes which aren't actually minorities, have to take so many losses on a day-to-day basis, the small little decisions, the compromises of your character, your soul, your desires. We have to take them, but we wake up every day like Groundhog Day, like you didn't know. Like, why are you getting angry that the plasters are this color? Why are you getting angry that you're paying taxes to a system that has messed up your home country? Stop being surprised, mate. Like it's been like this for a while, which is why I talk about history and politics and economics. Now, when you embrace that, so my point being that it starts with education. Know the reality of the game that you're playing, and it doesn't have to catch you off guard, which is why I'm so passionate about contextualized learning. Don't send these kids out into the world without having the grown-up discussion. This is the birds and the bees. The reality of inequality is the birds and the bees. The other day I went to a school and I was speaking to year 11s and I offhandedly mentioned the fact that their community has nothing. That wasn't even the point of what I was saying, but afterwards the teacher came up and thanked me emphatically and said, I always get in trouble for saying that. And I thought, and her saying that gave me it made me sick to think that you would get in trouble from acknowledging the fact that the community has nothing. I don't see why that's offensive. If it offends teachers hearing that, imagine how it offends me seeing it.
Sure. In one of your recent singles, the sort of refrain is, if I can do it, you can too.
Yeah.
How real is that,
Okay.
given all those obstacles?
Okay, so this goes back to the whole conversation now. When you take the L, you form strategies, you form defense mechanisms, coping mechanisms, navigation systems. What I've had to do is accept the fact that I am othered. I've had to accept the fact that as a black man in society, they're ready for me to rap. They might not be ready for me to just run for parliament and as I am. They might accept a version of me. So embracing those things, I then use them to my advantage. I was like, okay, I'll get a record deal. You can take 83% of the sales. Right? I'll get a degree in Cambridge.
SUV sponsor.
All of that. I'll do it all, but I will narrate it. I'll be clear. I'll make sure that these kids get the write-up. I'll be honest with them. That's why it makes me uncomfortable to speak about my poetry as a commodity, but I might as well, because it is. Now, if I do that, then it is sending messages to not just the kids, but wider society. I want to make a social contribution. I don't take any of this personally. I know that white people of today didn't construct slavery. I know that white privilege is a thing, and white people will benefit from it inherently. It's not the people of today's fault. So the solution for me is to contribute and have an open and honest discussion. It's just like a marriage. Things go in. It's more like a familial relationship in terms of that there was abuse in the past. It's like dealing with abuse. I've never said this publicly, but I do feel the story of Africa in particular and the presence of the African in Western society today is a story of rape. And dealing with the consequences, the emotional consequences, the psychological consequences of rape. You will know that rape victims have reported suffering with issues of self-esteem, self-hate, self-abuse, all of these things I see in Africans of today. We narrate them and offer coping strategies, contribute to the educating process, because information and collaboration makes us all better. And that's where I embrace the things that make me sick, but narrate them to make the contribution.
Does this ring true, Heidi, in your research?
Well, I want to pick up the point that you're talking about in terms of, the rape and the way that we embody and live out those injustices, but they're more than injustices, because this has been an erasure of others, of people of African and Indian descent who have been part of the colonies. There's never been a reconciliation. There's never been a saying sorry. We had, in fact, on this very stage, we had the 2007, abolition of enslavement celebration, which I organized. I had to organize it because, they need people like me to organize it.
Take that on.
And so there hasn't been that forgiveness. And when we're talking about things like Black history, which I'm going to talk about later on today, it isn't about naming Black people in that history. It's actually about seeing the interconnectedness of the privilege within this society with the past. Mm-hmm. So I understand what you're talking about, the rape, but the rape was far more than that. It's about the erasure and the misrecognition of Blackness and of otherness in its own right, so that the only way that we are allowed to see ourselves as Muslims, as Muslim Asian people, as Black African people, is through the eyes of whiteness. So today, this morning, we had on the stage the politicians talking about Britishness and British values. And my question is, whose values are those? What are we talking about? We're talking about integration so that we don't have the radicalization. I'm going to hip hop here. We want integration so we don't have radicalization, so that we don't have, these young women going off to Syria. Now, I don't get that story, because we're not dealing with the root of the problem, which is misrecognition. Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a broader conversation, which is why I said the marginalized communities aren't always minorities. It's a broader conversation about representation.
Yeah.
Totally.
Who chairs the discussion? Who has a contribution to this? Even just, you can see it in economic structures, the mechanics of the IMF. Who owns who has the final say relative to what, and how legitimate is that mandate? Where did it come from? Why are we not having a But the more we do our work, the more these discussions will be elaborated, which is why it's business as usual.
And I think, so for people like me who end up being asked to chair these things, for all of those reasons maybe, I think there is a lack of confidence about us wanting to talk about the issues that you talk about, and that you said earlier that you're the professor around these equality issues, and could you be a professor of other things? Would you be allowed? Was kind of what I heard. That may not be completely accurate. But do we need more people like me who are getting into and confident to talk about gender and race issues for it to really happen, or do we need to back off and allow you to give your own voice?
A bit of both, I would have said. I mean, I think we need. I don't know if you want me to really sort of sum up at this point, but I think what we really do need is a mixture of both. We need what I've called in some of my work and recently safe spaces for white people to talk about these issues. But what happens in those safe spaces is that we're often asked to come and tell our story, which is what you do when you're rapping or I'm lecturing. We come into white spaces like this and we tell our story. And there is a kind of a violence in that interaction because we are still talking in spaces of white privilege. And so, to what extent we're heard and to what extent that sort of symbolic violence leaves the room is another question. So I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell white people, well, this is what you need to know so that we don't have the inequalities that we have, the injustices that we have in our communities. The fact that you can have the same qualifications you could end up with the same A-levels as a white young person and go for your interview at university to get into a Russell Group University and not get in. So you're less likely, 4 times less likely to get in with the same A-levels into a Russell Group University because of the color of your skin. True. Now, how do I teach you that? How do I teach you the
George,
generosity or the understanding or the recognition of otherness where you see it as equal?
Sure. And George, in your interview in the TES last week, you talked about the experience of saying to your teacher you wanted to go to Cambridge.
Yep.
Was it that story?
My teacher rejected the idea quite unceremoniously in front of my class. Basically because, which I later came to understand, I wasn't the type. Now, he hid behind statistics to say, he said, I was in the class, I said, I had put my name down for the Oxbridge application prep program. He'd noticed that, being the head of year, he's privy to information that I'm not, it was basically, that was a closed scenario, but he opened the discussion up in front of class. He said, George, why is your name on that list? So I want to go to Cambridge. He was like, wait, right there. He came back with a list of stats, and he said, the average Oxbridge undergrad has 9 A stars. How many do you have? I said 4. He says, probably best not to apply then, isn't it? I was like, okay. Again, taking the L. Obviously, it was very humiliating. I had to absorb that, and I kept that from my mum. I didn't address it. My mum later discovered and reacted. I'm obviously now a Cambridge graduate, thanks to my mum's reaction. But the point being that what was actually lost on me were a number of things. Firstly, I didn't know anything about education outside of school. And at that point, I'd been studying sociology for about a year, but I wasn't able to contextualize things. Secondly, I had actually, there was more to the interview, to the Cambridge application process than the hard facts and the type. The school were a machine that was used to training us on the code. I obviously, like I said, was at odds with the code at many points in my school career. So there were other black boys that were encouraged to apply to Cambridge because they more fit the code. They were from a middle class background, and they had even the stats on their side. It's humans that run the world. You sit down and have a conversation with someone, look them in the eye, what's the problem?
And then I have to ask the question that I know what I think the answer is, but I want to hear yours. You went to a grammar school. Mm-hmm. You were in the last year of grammar at your school. We've been talking about social mobility. There'll be some people who'd want me to say, well, isn't the answer for social mobility for people like you to bring back grammar schools?
What I would argue is that there are aspects of the grammar school that are beneficial. First of all, the intensive training, basically the work, no days off. The work ethic was amazing. I'm so glad I had that. Secondly, the thing about grammar schools is that, or my grammar school, it propounds the middle class ideology. It is a ruling class ideology. Now, this is where the take the L philosophy comes in. That's bad, but it works. And it works because it's just like racism. The foundations of racism are imaginary, but its effects are real because it informs social organization, personal behavior. If that's the case, work with it. Now, as Heidi's explained, we are in the context of white privilege. Those grammar schools are an instrument of that thing. What would be great is if we had better education, as arguably Michael Gover's tried to fight for, but arguably, right? What it is actually better teaching, and it's not to say that teachers are doing a bad job, but it's teaching that encompasses more information, which is the benefit of the knowledge of the experiences that Heidi and I share, informing you on how to connect and understand and incorporate and better your services. But also, we need a multi-agency approach. We need every other aspect of society to organize themselves around the sharing of power, around greater representation. When everyone does that, and that's why I said the last thing I said after my performance, please don't be scared. Like, if we are basically saying, give us more, but only because it's fair, not because we're greedy or ungrateful. Like, even the fact that I have to qualify that statement makes me sick, but it is what it is.
Your answer on grammar schools?
As George was saying, what certain educational institutions do is equip you with a cultural capital to move in white society. And that's what we do. We become chameleons. We can shift and change, and we know the rules of the game. So that's what we got from it. But and it's propelled us into the places that we can go and the way that we can move, in certain environments. But what we have at the moment is an increasing, or should I say, decreasing social mobility. And what do we have at the same time? Increasing fragmentation of the ways that our schools are organized. So we have so-called choice now. We can go to free schools, we can go to academies, we can state-funded, church schools, faith schools. We have a whole plethora of different kinds of schools. And what do we have? Increasing inequality. Yep. So the question is, it isn't about bringing back grammar schools, but looking at the democratization of our schooling system and saying, what is going on? How is privilege now being reorganized in the new school systems? And what you see is that, you have independent schools being the repository of privilege. And you've got black middle-class families and Asian families knowing the rules of the game, saving up their money and sending their kids. So it is about different routes into education. Sure. Choice, which is the neoliberal thing. Yeah. We now live in a neoliberal world where we're told that choice and aspiration come together. So you can aspire and you can choose, and there's all this, this chocolate box for you to choose from. But it's inherently poisonous.
Sure. I think I now agree. It's taken me a long time. Let me just go into one other thing before we wrap up. The first time I saw you perform, George, as I said at the beginning, was at Buckingham Palace. You performed a poem called All Existence is Contribution. In that poem, there is a line, what better teacher than enterprise? Just talk me through that, because some people would say that just sounds very Thatcherite. It sounds like, we should just all go off and start businesses. Is that the answer?
The thing about enterprise is that it takes stock in fact, let me explain my approach. The take the L philosophy has to take stock of the situation as you find it, right? So we are in the economic context of capitalism. Now, that context is the one thing that I struggled with hip-hop music for a long time was the way it talked about money. I thought it's an immature conversation. Get money, right? What I later came to understand is that they are completely right. The more money you have, the better equipped you are to deal with all the BS. That's the logic. That doesn't make me happy. But I can't think of I haven't developed an economic structure, a viable alternative to capitalism that can happen in my lifetime. I don't know how to do that right now.
You're not alone.
Because that is the situation on the ground, what occurs to me is that it would be better for everyone to have an actual shot at attaining that independence, that freedom. It's all about freedom. I was contemplating doing a different poem today called The Lazy Dog. And to summarize that poem, the idea is that if you have a dog in your backyard that's making a lot of noise because she's hungry, but at the same time, and it's quite a convoluted analogy that I developed from seeing a neighbor's dog. The dog was tied to the kennel, right? And the neighbor used to throw food out, but the food never reached where the dog actually was. So the neighbor used to shout abuse at the dog, ignorant to the fact that the dog can't reach, like, you think it's lazy. It can't get the food. So when I talk about enterprise, it's actually about going to get the food. And the reason I'm an advocate of it is because it embraces responsibility. It is like, all right, just when all the barking and the moaning is done, you need to go and get the food. And that's the bit, it's basically what I would do if I was white. I don't have the privilege of being white in this society, so I have to use the mechanisms that are available to me. Rap music, they like to hear people rap, cool, I can modify the rap. I then use the rap to overtly educate my youngers. I make sure that the community, that the benefits of my career is intrinsically tied to the development of my community. I make it so that my record label understands without unequivocally that we sell more records if I tell the truth in the way that I'm comfortable with. So that is an enterprising solution that is inherently social. When you read my book, there are enterprising overtones, but these are strategies that I'm keen to elaborate because I think it's about conscious capitalism and responsible enterprise, sustainable development, languages that make sense to everyone, but they have to happen on fair, that discussion has to happen on a fair playing field.
Listen, I think we've run out of time. That's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you both very much. I've learned a huge amount.